So thank you to everybody for coming along. For anyone that doesn't know me, I think it says Abby on the screen, but my name's actually Karen. I'm on Abby's account. I'm one of the co-founders of the Fertility Circle app. And for anyone that might have joined us from Instagram or doesn't know about the app, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. We have launched the app in a hope to help empower and support and connect people that are trying to conceive. It's something that we hoped that we could have had when we were trying. It's free to download and you can have access to lots of helpful information, wonderful expert events like this. You can connect with others on the social walls. And find out some more about our amazing team of resident experts that we have on board. And speaking of resident experts, we have Joy Coppedge, who is a fertility nutrition coach with us today. Hi, Joy. Joy has worked in the wellness industry for just under a decade, and he helps people to overcome roadblocks and to take ownership of their own fertility health. And Joy is based in California, but obviously with the use of technology and video consultations, his services are easily accessible to everyone now. And I guess during these COVID times, it's particularly helpful to be able to access support in this way. In this session, Joy is going to be helping us to explore, plan and assess issues around weight and how we can move forward to create real and lasting change to support our fertility. Just before we get started, I just want to say that everyone's cameras and microphones, if you could have them off just to minimise any disruptions during the event. And at the end, there'll be an opportunity for anyone to join in and ask questions. If anyone has any questions as we go along, please just pop them in the chat section at the bottom, and I can put those forward to Joy on your behalf. And if you wish to remain anonymous, you can send me a private message via the chat and I will be the only one that will see that. And one last thing, if anyone would be interested in sending me their email addresses, Joy has really kindly provided a fantastic offer for you, which we'll share details of at the end of the event. So in order to send you the details, if you could just send me your email address in the chat and I'll make a note of it and we'll send you the discount code afterwards. So I'll now hand over to Joy, who will discuss with us if weight is really a factor when it comes to fertility. So thank you, Joy.
Thank you, Karen. I realized that the title of this whole thing is very much like a hook to get people like, oh, does it matter though? Does it really? I never thought it did, and I knew I was right about that. So for those of you who got tricked into it, we did our job. But the fact is, you know, does it really matter, or is this multifactorial, you know, very, 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 very complex question? Is it fair to kind of reduce it down to the one thing that you can actually see on your body as a sign of ultimate, you know, qualifying as healthy or unhealthy or fertile or infertile, or is there more to it? And I think the answer is obvious there, that there's more to it, and we have an hour to talk about that. So I guess I'll first start by just kind of reiterating a couple of things that you said. My name is Joey Coppedge. I am a fertility nutrition coach and behavior change specialist. So basically what those 6 words mean is that, you know, obviously I work with fertility patients or clients who are either trying to get pregnant, or they've been trying to get pregnant, or they're thinking about having a baby in the future. And they just want to be as healthy as possible to make that experience work and work well. I'm also, you know, the behavior change specialist. Part of the title is really, you know, the focus is that everything we do and everything that affects our health and every choice that we make is all based on our behaviors and the habits that establish those behaviors, which means it's all the little nitty gritty things that we're not like thinking about that are actually pulling the strings in our minds, which is annoying, right? Because it's harder to control. But I will hopefully touch on some of that kind of stuff today. The 3 things that I will go over today, so here's sort of an outline, is why is it that our doctors are always recommending weight loss? Why is it that changing our diet and lifestyle seems to be harder than it seems like it should be, whether it's weight loss or just, you know, I'm trying to eat less carbs now, or I need to lower my blood lipids. Why is it harder than it seems to just get it done? And how to make change after you've tried it all. We've all kind of been in that place where like, I've done all of this. I've tried everything. And then, your mom and your friends on Facebook and your doctor are all saying, well, try these 100,000 things that you've already tried variations of. How do I make change even when I've done all that stuff? So those are the three things we'll go over. I've left about 15 minutes or so at the end of the hour to open for questions. Obviously, I'm not that good at timing myself, so I don't know if it'll be 15 minutes or 20 minutes. But Karen did say something about tossing in those questions, and she can forward them over to me. And if I need a break to drink water, I'll stop and answer a question then. Cool. So the first question that I have rhetorically for myself, what do we know already about diet and lifestyle as it pertains to pregnancy? And I'm going to pull up a shared screen here to make it a little bit easier. And I promise I won't keep us on the shared screen the whole time, but let me just find it.
Can you see a bar along the bottom that says share screen?
Yeah, I found it. I just couldn't find the actual presentation
Okay.
itself. There we go. Ta-da! Okay. So what do we know about diet and lifestyle as it pertains to pregnancy? We've all been sort of motivated to change because of, a doctor's recommendation, right? Or because we've read up on the science about excess body fat. Everything that we've ever heard always makes its way around to weight. According to a 2018 article in the Reproductive Biology and Endocrinology Journal, which is what you see here on the screen, it has been reported that the time to conceive is longer in women who are underweight or overweight or obese, and that obesity and overweight are significantly associated with decreased pregnancy rates, increased requirements of gonadotropins, and higher miscarriage events. Finally, a high BMI or body mass index is also associated with adverse pregnancy outcomes such as gestational diabetes, hypertension, and premature labor. All in all, that whole segment of words is a pretty good sell for weight loss. You kind of read it and you're like, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess I should lose some weight. And it supports everything that your doctor's ever kind of said. But specifically, a reduction in body fat itself isn't the cure-all for disease, kind of like I was saying before. Let's add on the beginning of this assessment here. This slide does not seem to be changing. Hold on a sec. Okay, back. So it's not changing on this slide. Wonderful. I'm just going to read it then for you. The thing is, okay, so this is a quote from the Endocrinology Journal, but the beginning of this quote actually says, inadequate diet, as those with poor calories and protein content or vice versa, based on habitual hypercaloric food assumption, aka overeating, leading to severe thinness or overweight, is definitely affects ovarian reserve and increases the risk of female infertility. So specifically, specifying that inadequate diet is what threatens fertility is enough to help us stop blaming and shaming the body fat and start asking for more specific questions about how and what to change exactly. So now that we know, how inadequate diet can cause problems, what's the solution, right? What will support fertility and prevent and manage and help cure disease? is increasing your intake of things like whole fruits, whole vegetables, more water, whole grains, reducing your intake of things like saturated fats, processed carbs, kind of things that we've already known kind of floating around in our heads, right? It's not as simple as just saying you need to lose weight. It's more complex, like reducing and increasing those specific things in your diet. Um, and these kinds of foods, these are what provide the energy and the raw materials that all of our metabolic systems need to function, from our respiratory system to our circulatory system to, you guessed it, the reproductive system. Or all of these, not just food supplies all the systems, but the right kinds of food are required for them to function. And it just so happens one of the many outcomes of consuming the right kinds of food is weight loss, which is why we often hear our doctors encouraging weight loss generally. But to suggest weight loss without addressing the underlying behaviors is kind of like building a piece of furniture from IKEA with no tools or no instructions, just a picture of the finished product, right? You see a picture on the box and you say, I can do that. And then you pull out all the parts and you're like, this is more complicated than it should have been, right? And so that's why it's really important that we kind of dig, right? We don't minimize it to just weight loss. We dig for the complexities of what are the behaviors that need to change and how to do it, and how do I stick to it. So next time you hear something about weight loss from your doctor or whoever, ask for more. Ask, why is weight a problem for me right now? Am I deficient in certain key nutrients? Are there certain foods that I may not realize are contributing to the issue that I have? Are there specific objectives that I can address on my own from a simple, blood tests that you're always doing anyway, like lipids or cholesterol or sugar? What can I control myself that's doable and bite-sized? And wherever the weight gain started, right, is really the underlying cause of concern, not just the weight itself. So regardless of what it is you're trying to change, whether it's we're trying to just lose weight because our doctor said you just need to lose weight, or if maybe they got more specific and they told you exactly what the issue is and what it caused, what it was caused by. When their recommendation, your doctor's recommendation, lines up with your motivation, then the prospect of change can start getting really exciting, right? Now, not only are you being told what to do, you're not just being told to change. You're being told to change and you want it because you know what the outcome is going to be, and you kind of maybe have a plan, or you have at least some ideas. And it's a worthy cause too, right? You're doing what's best for your family. So you put out feelers on Facebook. You go to get diet recommendations. You do a lot of Googling. You ask your friends and your grandparents and your sister, and you reach back into your past to consider what has worked in the past for you, and let's try it again. Maybe you signed up for a meal plan, or you download an app. You've got it all planned out, and then day one, when you're starting this behavior change journey now, or this diet journey now, you are more energized than you've ever been. You're ready to do it. You're ready to go all in. Day two rolls around and you're still crushing it. And it would be nice to kind of indulge in those same indulgences that you usually do. But eventually three months passes, and then suddenly you realize you haven't even thought about that diet in 3 weeks. And you're not really sure what stopped or why it stopped, but all you know is that it just stopped, and you have no idea when. Even though on the background you are so motivated to begin with, like where is the disconnect? So really the question is what happens between that person I was when I was super motivated to change and completely falling back into my normal routine? What happened in that space that's so gray? And the answer lies in a psychological phenomenon called introspective illusion. Introspection is like, with your eyes closed and thinking about, what are my motivations, or at least attributing your behaviors to those assumptions. And introspective illusion, to define it, is a cognitive bias in which our confidence in our ability to sustain a behavior change or to, see something out, it drowns out our ability to recognize any other possible influences on that behavior. I like to refer to this as the New Year's resolution phenomenon, where we set a lofty and worthy ambition for ourselves, all while disregarding how and if it even fits into the routine of our normal life. In other words, we might be super motivated to stick to a diet of whole, minimally processed foods. That the path to successfully getting there seems really clear. Like, it seems like there's nothing that's going to get in my way. This seems like a very, very simple task. I'm definitely going to do it. Nothing is going to get in my way. But what we fail to consider when committing to a goal like that, or to consider committing to those goals, is that, tomorrow morning we have to get up and eat breakfast, and the only thing we have is sugary cereal in the house. Maybe my lack of food prep skills or nutritional knowledge keeps me from realizing how much added sugar are in the ingredients that I am normally eating. Maybe having my favorite treat in the house makes it impossible for me to stay on track when certain triggers make me crave it throughout the day. Maybe my workday gets stressful and I have this unconscious habit of seeking relief from a bag of candy that I have in my desk. Maybe I live with someone who, they know that I love their cooking, but I feel ambivalent about telling them to cook differently. That's their way of showing me love, and I don't really want them to stop it. And then maybe, exerting the executive control to fight off every temptation, habit, convenience, coping mechanism that I have just to eat right 3 times a day is extremely exhausting. When we make these lofty goals, we don't consider all of those things that are going to possibly get in the way. So what's getting in the way of achieving our goals is not a lack of motivation or willpower. I know that myself and every client that I've ever worked with is always blames, maybe it's lazy, or I'm not motivated enough, or I don't have the willpower, or I'm not strong enough. It's always some sort of deprecating excuse. And it's not. I'm here to tell you right now, if this is the one thing that you take away from this conversation, I'm here to tell you now that it is not your motivation. It is not a matter of laziness. It is not a matter of willpower. You have all of those things, and they are a standard package that came with you when you were born. The problem is not the willpower. The problem is our habits. There is a famous actor who said, people don't decide their futures, they decide their habits, and then their habits decide their futures. And what he means is that because habits by their very nature happen unconsciously, kind of in the back of our mind, having the right habits in place is like putting ourselves on autopilot in the right direction. This is things like, teeth brushing and closing the cabinet after you take out the cereal, or locking the door when you leave. You're not thinking about these things when you do it. You're just doing them because it's what you've been doing for so long repetitively that it's been ingrained in your procedural memory, right? So these are habits. And the thing is, he's mostly right. That quote that I just read, he's mostly right, that we choose our habits and our habits take us the rest of the way. But unfortunately, he's only like halfway right. Some of these habits we've been doing for so long, we didn't choose them. We were taught them, or they were a matter of our environment, us adapting to our environment. In fact, 43% of the actions that we take every day are habits. So we can't, we can't underestimate the power that these quiet forces have over controlling our behaviors. What we can do is discover what those habits are, replace the ones that are maybe disruptive to our goal, and then emphasize the ones that are constructive, right? So not all habits are terrible. A lot of habits are there so that you don't have to think about every single thing you do every day. But some of those habits are there as maybe a coping mechanism or a learned behavior, and just so happens they also don't coincide with your goals in life. So, by sort of taking up that first layer of topsoil and digging a little bit deeper just to see what those habits are, which is unfortunately the hard part, that allows you to sort of decide which ones need to stay and which ones need to go. So yeah, habits are one of those things. It's like everybody knows what the word habit is. It's kind of like a boring thing. It doesn't sound like, yeah, great, we all have bad habits, wonderful, how do I fix it? But the fact of the matter is, understanding habits, understanding their power, and understanding how prevalent they are in your everyday life, and kind of sitting with that for a moment really helps you to celebrate the power and the boon that habits can be, while also helping you to understand that this is a weapon that sometimes gets turned on ourselves as well. So let's summarize what we talked about here. Weight loss itself is not alone the solution to every problem, right? Our bodies are complex, and addressing dysfunctions requires uncovering and the underlying causes. And changing our food choices doesn't depend on our motivation. It depends on our habits and the limiting factors that reinforce those habits. So now that we know, what is it about weight and weight loss that is the big darn deal, and does it actually matter? Once we are able to decide for ourselves, does it matter to me? Does my doctor know enough about me to specify what's wrong with weight? Once you can get through that conversation with your doctor and decide, okay, what is it that I need to change? Is it just weight loss? Is the excess body fat on me causing a problem? Most likely not. If so, let's dig a little bit deeper with your doctor, figure out what the actual problem is. Then now we're at the place where, okay, now I want to change something. Now I'm ready to change because I know what it is I want to change, and it's not some arbitrary weight loss goal that someone just recommended. So now that we're specific, now that we know where we're going with this, we're able to make better, more specific choices about what to get rid of and what to keep. We often think of making a singular health change as a singular task. Let's think of an example, I guess, really quick. Singular health change could be, I want to lower my blood cholesterol. For some reason, blood cholesterol is too high. You don't know why, it just is, because it was on a blood test and your doctor is saying that could have an adverse outcome in your fertility or in your pregnancy. So I know that I want to change that, and whatever it takes, I want to get that done. So we often think of that singular change as a singular task, but we can't overlook the plurality of the factors that support and empower that singular health change. In other words, installing a better food choice or better habit in order to change our blood cholesterol also requires paying attention to eating behaviors that support it, activity and recovery that it fuels, the food skills, your mindset, and asking for what you need. All of these factors sort of surround that singular change that you're trying to make. So, going into it thinking, oh, this is one thing, it'll be, it should be simple to just fix this one thing. It requires a little bit more credit than that, right? And once we can give it that credit, and once we can give that singular thing the credit it deserves, we can stop assuming that we can dive in and take on, 25 health changes, because they all require their own, bevy of support systems as well. I guess, the conventional way of making change in our lives is to kind of dive in and sort of hope we survive. But for any of us who have ever been on a diet or have tried to go to the gym and change something, what we realize is that, it may work for a little while, but then it doesn't after a while, and we're wondering what happened. Or it does work, and then later on it's not, or maybe it just didn't work at all, and we're blaming the diet, or we're blaming the personal trainer, or we're blaming something. But either way, we're at this point now where we've tried it, and now we're back at square one. So instead of, I think that the second thing that you can take from this conversation, if anything at all, is that we don't get paid more in life by being more productive with ourselves. At our jobs, if we are more productive, if we're producing more, if we're doing more work in less time, we get a raise, and we get praised for that, right? We get a promotion. In life, when it comes to your health, when it comes to your personal goals, we don't get we don't get paid any more money, and we don't get anything else out of life when we force ourselves to be more productive. In fact, it usually backfires, which is why a lot of times we find ourselves back at square one when we try to take off a bigger bite than we can chew. So with that said, this brings us to the third part of this bigger conversation is, how do I make change after I tried everything? The answer is you have to map out your behaviors. And this is not a practical thing. This is not something that they teach us in school. But mapping out your behaviors is, something that someone like me, a behavior change specialist and a nutrition coach, can help with. Not only because, it's kind of heady to do once, but it's also to do for every single change you want to make from now until 6 months from now or a year from now. Requires a lot of accountability and a lot of just hands-on support. Myself, I'm just going to toot my own horn for a second. Myself, when I work with clients, we work one-on-one once a week. So it's not a monthly thing, it's a once a week thing, so that every single week we can decide, not on some big new lofty goal, we can decide, okay, here's the little stupid things that I didn't realize I was going to run into. How do we change it? How do we maybe take a smaller bite? How do we take a step back so that every step we go forward is a step that is going to be successful, not because you're forcing yourself to be successful, but because you've allowed yourself to assess all the little barriers that are going to get in the way regardless, right? This is an approach that honors the humanness in us. So we meet once a week and assess behaviors on a really smaller scale, so that on a monthly and on a yearly basis, you're making bigger, really big changes that are sustainable and not so flipping your life upside down just to get it done. So I'm going to try to go back into this slide show. Karen, does it look like these slides are changing at all as I go through them?
No, it's stuck on that one. Unless you try to stop sharing your screen and then share it again.
Nope. Oh, don't you just love when you work so hard on something?
Hang on, let me see if I can stop you sharing.
Okay, it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. I can.
Do you want to try resharing?
I don't really need it. What's that?
You want to try resharing your screen and see if it works now?
Let's see. Shall. Do you know why I really wanted to do a presentation? Is so that I could have my head in this little bubble down here. It's not doing it. It's okay. It's okay. No worries. No worries. Okay, we get out of that. All right, everybody, we're back from intermission.
Do you want me to leave this on or stop sharing?
Oh, I can. Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Boom. All right. Okay, so we're talking about behavior mapping, right? Let's say you have a physiological disorder like PCOS. There's only so much you can control, right? Especially since modern science isn't 100% certain on what are the causes of PCOS, but you can control your certain diet and lifestyle behaviors that contribute to and that exacerbate the symptoms of PCOS, right? You can only control so much. So of that small piece of the pie that you can control, you should, right? And that kind of rule sort of applies to most things. Like diet and lifestyle is not the 100% cure-all magical solution to everything, but it is a very big slice of the pie. Even though sometimes the cards were dealt were not great cards. So anyhow, let's say PCOS is something that you're struggling with. And so your objective, because you're motivated by your desire to start a family, is to, I want to change something to help my PCOS. And I know that focusing on food choice can help. Okay, so we started off with PCOS. Now we've decided that food choice is something I want to sort of narrow my focus down to. You've decided that you want to do that because you know that eating a variety of whole, minimally processed foods is one of the many food choices that you can make, but maybe the one that sounds the most doable to you. So then we have to kind of come up with a strategy, right? You know, you want to eat more whole, minimally processed foods in order to change your food choices. So what's our strategy? It's not good enough to just kind of go into it saying whole, minimally processed foods and expecting that to happen. So we come up with a strategy based on, you know, what I think is going to be what are you willing to do? What are you ready to do? What are you able to do? What do you have access to? What can you afford? You know, so we come up with a sort of a strategy that fits your life. That's not going to make you go out and spend a whole week forcing yourself to do something that's so unnatural and so you know, that's so disruptive to your normal life, that you come back in a week and you're like, you know what, I just couldn't do it, right? I want to make this as easy as possible. So we come up with a strategy of, you know, replacing one serving of processed food with one serving of whole food at every meal. And a lot of times that kind of sounds like, well, I don't eat that much processed food. The fact is, most of us eat processed food without even realizing it. And when we start a strategy that's this small, like, oh, we're just replacing one serving of processed food with one serving of whole food, it gives us the opportunity to just kind of notice, like, what are these things that I'm over, what are these processed foods that I'm maybe not noticing I'm eating, and just spending 1 week doing that is already helpful in and of itself. So let's take it a little bit further. So you've been doing that for a week and you come back and you realize that replacing one serving of processed food with one serving of whole food was great. You realize that there was more there than you realized, but you weren't 100% successful at doing that. If you were 100% successful at doing that, then what we might say is, okay, let's spend the next week replacing 2 servings at every meal, if that's how many servings you've noticed are being processed foods. And then we'll spend a week doing that. But a lot of times people will come back and say, you know what, I didn't realize that there was that much processed foods, and I struggled a little bit. And I realized, you know, I might have this certain processed food, this packaged canned food on my plate for dinner every night, and I end up, you know, I'm cooking dinner and I don't have a whole lot of time, and I put it on the plate for my husband, but at that point, you know, I've already had some processed food at the beginning of the day. So at that point, I kind of give up. And the conclusion that we come to is that you're kind of in this habit of having this all or nothing thinking attitude. And so what we kind of attribute that to is that this all or nothing thinking is what's contributing to your inability to replace more of the processed foods that you're eating. So moving forward without first addressing the all or nothing thinking attitude is a mistake. So we stay there. We take a smaller bite out of this pie, so that we can address the all or nothing thinking. So, you know, maybe that week we do a couple of exercises about all or nothing thinking. You know, instead of thinking of things as either good or bad or perfect or completely imperfect, we start thinking of things on a continuum or on a scale. Like, what's a little bit, if this is the worst and this is the best option, what's something in the middle, so that you can be happy and, you know, achieve your goals without completely saying, screw it, I'll start over tomorrow. So, you know, establishing tactical strategies that sort of apply to and support your original strategy are going to help you sort of dig a little bit deeper into the underlying causes of this main issue, which is making better food choices for your PCOS. So now we've dug a little bit deeper, making better food choices. We know we want to eat fewer processed foods. We know we want to replace some of the processed foods. We know that we have a habit of all or nothing thinking. So we go into your next week, we're doing the same skill, but with a little bit more detail to it. And then we come back the next week and you realize, you know what, one thing that got in my way this week is that I really only cook the same things all the time. I started off this whole task with, trying to get not only whole foods into my diet, but a variety of whole foods. And I've realized now that I kind of cook the same thing. And the reason why, and I guess my question would be, why are you cooking the same things? You're not a big foodie, you are bored with certain foods. What do you think? And maybe you come back with the fact that, like, I just don't know that many ways of cooking the same kinds of things. Um, your food prep skills, if you will, are lacking. So then that presents another opportunity to sort of build and reinforce the foundation that all of these bigger, more lofty goals were already sitting on and already sort of unsupported by. So we kind of, that can go on forever, right? Ideally, we start with something big, and we dig and dig and dig and dig a little bit deeper until we create better habits around um, all of those supporting behaviors. And then we move on to the next thing. And then we move on to the next thing. And maybe it's no longer just whole minimally processed foods that is your goal, because you've got really good at that now, and you've got all this support underneath it to make it happen. And you've kicked all of these limiting behaviors that you didn't even realize were there. So then we move on from whole minimally processed foods, and we move on to hydration. And we get all this foundation supported. We move on to feeling satisfied with your meals, and we figure out what the foundation is for that. We move on to meeting your basic nutrient needs, and we suss out what all the foundations are of those. And at the end of the day, what you're looking at is 4 or 5 skills that you've probably been working on your whole life, but that you didn't realize had hundreds of roots coming off of them that were diseased, or that were dysfunctioning, or that were just not getting the nourishment that they needed. And for the most part, what I realize when doing this with people is that it's not a lack of information that people have. People are not starving for knowledge. Everybody's got Google at their fingertips. Everybody's got, a friend that knows everything about health and has had 17 babies and wants to tell you how to do it. What we're lacking is the accountability and the motivation, and the empowerment of our own motivations to get there. So it's what I notice is that I'm not really, although I teach a lot of things about nutritional science and behavior psychology, I don't find myself teaching a whole lot of new information that people didn't know that they needed to do already. What I notice I typically do is uncover your own motivations, assign sort of guide you to assign yourself to certain health goals that you already have, or focuses that you already have. And then I help come up with a plan for that, so that you have some way of measuring it. You have some way of measuring your goal without just hoping it works out. And then holding you accountable. So yeah, that's sort of the behavior map that, this is something you can do on your own. If you're going to send out, Karen, an email about this to everybody who's here, I would love for you to send out this presentation that I worked so hard to make, so that people can see this behavior map. Because the behavior map it's just a very interesting way of considering that, like, all these things I already know I should be doing have a whole lot of stuff underneath them that support them as well.
Yeah, of course, we can definitely share that with people. So if anyone wants to have some more information, just pop your email address in the chat to me privately, and I'll make sure you get a copy of that.
So I would like to open it up. Actually, that was really great timing for me. I was doubting myself. I would like to open up to some questions. I feel like every time I do this, people are like, I don't know what to ask. And then one person asks something and everyone else is like, oh my God, I have 1,000 questions. So
exactly.
Bring
Someone
it,
actually
bring it
said,
on.
so when you were talking about habits and how, a lot of this is habit based, someone's saying, how long do you think it takes to form a new habit?
Aha. I would guess that everybody here has probably heard a number before, like it takes 21 days, or it takes 7 days, or it takes 61 days to form a habit. But the answer, the long of the short of it, is that there's not a number of days that it takes. It depends on like what the habit is. It depends on how many things are in the way of that habit. It depends on how many limiting factors or how many barriers are there to that behavior or to that habit. And I guess the best way to think of it is this. If I want to get into a habit of drinking 3 glasses of water a day, I have to do it. I have to have a plan for drinking 3 glasses of water a day if I'm not already doing that. So I do it. I come up with a perfect plan for it, and it's fail safe. Great. So it works. Wonderful. So I do the 3 glasses of water. What's happening is every single day that I drink the 3 glasses of water, every time, everything it takes for me to do it, go fill it up, whatever, I'm having to think about doing that those 3 glasses of water. I'm having to consciously use my executive control to make those 3 glasses of water happen. I'm having to work for it, right? And after a week, after a month, after 2 months, every single time that I repeat that same behavior, and this is the important part, repeat and be persistent about repeating that behavior, the repetition of such ingrains itself into a part of our memory called the procedural memory. And that procedural memory is where things like brushing your teeth live, getting to work, that's where that lives. Closing the cabinet after you pull cereal out. You're not thinking about, oh, I need to close the cabinet now, right? You're not thinking about, I need to go get more water now, if it's already a habit. But until you get to that point where it's ingrained into your procedural memory, it's work. Once you finally get there, eventually you stop having to think about it every single day because it just becomes natural. It just becomes a habit because it's ingrained in your procedural memory and it's happening in the back of your mind. So you're free. You're free to use your executive control for something else, to think about something else. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that. There are a lot of like assumptions and averages, I guess, but it really depends on. I think that we find comfort in numbers, but I think that I think we're better off kind of taking it as this is not something that's comfortable. Being persistent about repeating a habit is a little bit uncomfortable, but you can do it.
If somebody is trying to, drink 3 glasses of water a day and perhaps one day they don't manage to do it, would you suggest they just keep going and the next day start again? Because like you were saying earlier, sometimes
Yep.
you might have a day where it's not gone so well and you think, oh, well, that's it. I've lost track now. But is it just a case of the next day you just start fresh and start again?
Yes. Part of creating a habit is failure too. Actually, part of maintaining behavior change. There are 5 phases of change, one of which is maintenance. That's the last one. So after you get to the phase where you're having to maintain a behavior change, part of the process of maintenance is failure. And a lot of times when people are trying to change something about their habits, once they fail at the maintenance part, they either see that as a failure and they feel bad about it because they have to start over. But once you realize that failure is a part of that maintenance process, failure is a mechanism of helping you to ingrain that habit in your procedural memory, then you start to realize that, failure is not something I need to feel bad about. Failure is going to happen. It's bound to happen. Noticing that you did fail and persisting to start again the next day, or not even the next day, just right away. That's where the enrichment of that behavior change comes in.
And I guess it's about perhaps not letting the guilt consume us. So, if you feel guilty that you've done it, don't let that stop you from continuing.
Yeah. Guilt is a little monster that lives in our brains that we sometimes we have to tell it, go sit in a corner somewhere else, please.
Yeah. Someone else has said, can you share any tips on overcoming that all or nothing approach? Because I'm really bad at that. So can we allow ourselves treats sometimes or days off to be a bit more flexible?
Yeah. Well, other than telling your shame monster to go sit in the corner, um, uh, there's a really, popular commandment of wellness people that is like having a cheat day or having, allowing yourself to, like, one day out of the week to have your indulgences. That is very much a something that works for like bodybuilders and fitness models because their diets are so strict and to an unhealthy level that's not sustainable, and they don't sustain it. It's only meant to be happening for like a season, right? It's that, allowing a cheat day is just built into their already extremely rigid um, routine. For the rest of us, mere mortals, for the rest of us who are just trying to live our life, who are trying to start a family, who are trying to be as healthy as possible, who are trying to work our normal jobs, having those cheat days is not, it's not beneficial because we don't have somebody like prescribing our food to us at every moment. The way of thinking, the best way to think about that, overcoming this all or nothing approach is that, we're not, the idea is not to completely restrict these indulgences that we have. The idea is not to schedule out the indulgences that we have. The idea is not to focus on the indulgences at all. The idea is to focus on creating a habit of eating better. I want to create a habit and repeat that habit of eating whole foods. I want to create a habit and repeat it of maintaining my nutrients every day. I want to create a habit of eating these types of vegetables and these types of fruits and these types of proteins. And, your indulgences can be over here. And if they happen because of real life, wonderful, great. But that's not your focus, right? Your focus, if part of all of those other habits becomes, okay, I'm going to also create a habit of once a week indulging or once a week having a cheat day, then now you're creating a habit for the rest of your life that is not going to be super healthy. The other way of thinking about that is if you know that having the one bite-sized Snicker bar thing, if you think like, oh, I'm just going to have one as a little treat, but you also know that that one little treat is the set off point that you're not going to be able to stop, then you have to acknowledge that. And a lot of times that takes somebody else acknowledging it with you, because I think a lot of us realize that like once I start, I can't stop, and I think that's a more prevalent problem than a lot of us realize. Yet we still sort of trick ourselves into believing that I'll just have one and it'll be fine. Like I'll allow myself to have that one. So sometimes, and especially for people who are in this group, we are all on a really, really important track. This is a very important time in our life. And if this Thanksgiving, I'm in the United States, so Thanksgiving, and if this Christmas, just not going into the pie area or doing something outrageous to keep you away from the temptations, makes you feel silly around your family, makes you feel like you don't fit in, this is the year to do it. And I don't suggest that for all of the rest of your life. I don't think you should restrict yourself for the rest of your life, but for this year, this is a really wonderful year to do it, because you don't want to be in the same place next year wondering, why can't I just, change this behavior? So yeah, I hope that answered that question. It's a really tricky thing. And it's, I guess to sum that up, it's not about focusing on allowances. It's about focusing on what you want, what positives do you want, and not focusing on the negative.
The person said, thank you, that's really helpful.
Okay, good.
I can relate to so much of this as well, because at the moment I'm trying to really focus on my diet and my nutritional choices, and I can relate to all of that. Sometimes I do think, oh, I'll just have one, and you're right, it's never one. So I'm definitely an all or
Mhm.
nothing kind of person.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people
But I
are.
think just you and I saying that out loud is probably very helpful for everyone listening because
Yeah,
everybody knows it in their mind.
yeah,
But it's different. It's one thing to know it. It's another thing to say it out loud.
yeah. This has definitely inspired me and motivated me. I think it's so interesting, just like you say, to have someone to support you through it and to have that accountability partner. Because if you're left to your own devices, it's difficult to maintain that over a long period of time, or um,
Totally.
keep going with it. So it's definitely useful to have that extra support.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
unless anyone's got any more questions, I don't think any have come through. But if anybody does have questions after this, feel free to get in touch with us and we can connect you with Joey, or you can find details of how to contact him via the app. I've also put the link to his website in the chat, so you can have that. We'll also be following up with an email afterwards with some details for you. And as a thank you for attending today, Joey has kindly offered everyone that's attended a free grocery guide and a meal builder if you sign up for a free no obligation strategy call with him, and also 25% off his 6-month program. So those will be super helpful, and if you want to get those, just send me your email and I'll put the details of how to get that. So thank you so much, Joey, for providing such helpful information and just some tips
Thank you.
to keep us on track. If anybody does want to get in touch, like I say, just reach out to us and we can connect you. And we have an Instagram live with Joey next week on Wednesday at the same time, I think. So if anyone wants to join us there, you can come along and ask questions, and we'll be chatting again about more nutrition tips. So thank you to everybody for joining, and thank you so much, Joey.